So I want to start today with what's really fundamentally an infrastructure story, but also a story about how we often sort of miss the forest for the trees, or we end up wrapped up in a detail when the bigger story is really the big picture. Many of you might have heard about this bridge collapse that took place in Pittsburgh. And because of the timing of a Joe Biden trip to Pennsylvania, it immediately became very, very political. We're even going to look at a clip on Fox News of a couple of anchors there talking about the collapse and Joe Biden's infrastructure bill and just getting just about every single fact wrong. But before we get to that, I think it's important to remind you guys that when we talk about infrastructure and the fact that the U.S. is woefully behind on infrastructure spending, that infrastructure spending, which in many countries is not political, in the U.S. is so politicized and partisan that we have hundreds of bridges with the exact same rating as the Pittsburgh bridge that collapsed. And yet we only talk about the issue in real serious terms when a bridge actually collapses. When we have debates about infrastructure, it is mentioned in passing. Hey, we have many bridges that need to be repaired, brought back, modernized, etc. But it's almost like it doesn't really exist until there's a bridge collapse. And case in point, there's a very good article on NewJersey.com, NJ.com, which points out nearly 500 New Jersey bridges received the same poor rating as the one that collapsed in Pittsburgh. And this is for New Jersey, and it has a map so you can see which are nearby. But it points out on the FHWA's National Bridge Inventory for 2021, 482 Garden State bridges received a grade of poor. That's the same rating as the bridge in Pittsburgh's Frick Park that collapsed on Friday morning, injuring 10 people. States, federal agencies, and tribal governments submit data to the bridge inventory on an annual basis. About 7% of Jersey bridges have that poor grade. 27% are good, which is the highest rating, and the rest are somewhere in between. Each bridge receives ratings on its deck, superstructure, substructure, and culvert, et cetera, et cetera. So also important is that many of these are railway bridges over which trains are transiting. So obviously, most of these bridges rated poor are not going to collapse. I saw a comment from a bridge engineer who has explained that also you can't always tell by looking at a bridge which category it's in, that there's lots of bridges that look very bad cosmetically, but structurally are actually in that category good, even though if you or I looked at it, we would say that that's an absolute disaster. But there are lots of these bridges with the exact same rating, actual structural rating, as the Pittsburgh bridge that collapsed. Now, of course, it probably won't collapse when you or I or any one vehicle goes over it. Usually it doesn't happen, but it reminds us that we have a primarily reactive economy in the United States, and this is different than in many other countries. There's countries where you find this, but there's many European countries that have a different approach. In the US, certainly among the right, sometimes on the left as well, spending money before there's a problem is seen as imprudent. It's seen as a waste of money. And often the money doesn't get spent until something falls down or somebody dies first. It's similar in healthcare. Why make insurance companies cover all of this optional preventive stuff? Treat sick people. Well, no, but that's the whole point. The optional preventive stuff keeps people healthier on average, and it avoids some of that big spending later. Half the country, at least in terms of the political reality, just doesn't accept that. Whether they believe it or not, they don't accept it as a way to actually do politics. And it's the exact same principle here when it comes to these bridges, but bigger picture with infrastructure spending overall, which is when you look at that list. And remember, when we just had the debate over infrastructure, you look at that list and so many on the right and some on the left look at that list and they go, this stuff, it's not really infrastructure spending. How is it infrastructure spending where we are reacting to a particular storm by saying we're going to bring all of this stuff up to new code? That's not really recovery. That's something, these are pet projects. No, it's the same principle as with healthcare. And even with this, it took this one bridge collapse to get people thinking in slightly different terms about these things. But looking just at New Jersey, and you have 500 bridges with the exact same rating. And hopefully it doesn't happen frequently, but it's just a matter of time until it happens again. There are sort of like obscure anti-vax people that have died during the pandemic. I'll mention to you, this, deputy county commissioner, I don't even remember what she was, in California, who went to an anti-vax rally and posted some anti-vax stuff on her Facebook. She now died of COVID. But typically, most of those folks are not like known to us. And when they're known to us, they're often not known as anti-vax people. There's an incredible news story, which dozens of you sent me over the weekend, about a Washington state police officer who was sort of a celebrity anti-vaxxer. This was not an obscure random officer. Robert LeMay quit his job as a Washington state trooper because he didn't want to get vaccinated. During his sign-off, which we will look at, he told the Governor Jay Inslee to kiss his ass. He was on Fox News being interviewed by Laura Ingraham as if he was some kind of hero for quitting over the vaccine mandate. He's dead of COVID. He's dead of COVID. State trooper who told governor to kiss my ass over vaccine mandate dies of COVID-19. This is from 2 days ago. Robert LeMay, 51, famously signed off in his squad car after 22 years of service in October, just a few months ago, while blasting Democratic Governor Jay Inslee. The governor had mandated state workers get vaccinated against COVID, not unique to the state of Washington. LeMay died on Friday. Here is his principled and defiant sign-off, where he also sends a shot across the bow at the governor, Jay Inslee.
Wish I could say more, but this is it. So, State 1034, this is the last time you'll hear me in a state patrol car. And Jay Inslee can kiss my ass.
Wow, what a principled and defiant action that this guy took. Once again, he was also known to the Fox News community. Here he is being interviewed by Laura Ingraham and getting a hero's welcome. This was in October, right around the time that he did this stunt.
Well, last time I checked, they weren't really worried about the vaccination status at the border when we had tens of thousands of people waved in one, a 2-week period. So they don't seem too concerned about that, Robert. What's next for you, other than being a celebrity now? What's next for you?
Yeah, other than catching COVID and dying, right?
So I'm overwhelmed. I really am. I'm a pretty private person. And my son's in the military, and I'm like, son, this is what's happening. He goes, all right, Dad, I'm going black. So we're just trying to put our feet on the ground. I mean, it's funny. We're very religious people, and we prayed about all this when this first started. Lord, what do you want us to do?
And notice that the prayer did not save him from COVID. And that's, did he not pray correctly? Did he not pray hard enough? Did he do other things wrong so that God did not answer his prayers? Because for all the prayer, he died of COVID.
It's our path, and we've had applications out of state and all types of stuff, but Lord never really pointed us to one point. So we said, okay, maybe this is the fight. Well, then that came out and it went viral, and I'm like, okay, this is where you want us to do right now. So I'm the spokesperson for thousands and thousands. I even say millions of people. I think there's 2 million people that have actually viewed it. It's been 99% positive from everybody. I think this is my path right now. There's a lot of job offers that I'm getting, phenomenal job offers.
All right, well, a sleeping giant. Yeah, well, maybe a sleeping giant.
All right, so and there, Laura Ingraham cuts him off. She's had enough of it. So what was next for Robert LeMay was catching COVID unvaccinated and dying. And of course, as I've said before, we can't say for sure about any individual he would have survived had he been vaccinated. You can't ever say that about a particular person. Statistically, because the vaccines are so effective at preventing serious illness and death, all those great job offers that he was getting, all of this celebrity welcome and all of it, he would have been able to carry it out had he just been vaccinated. But of course, had he been vaccinated, he never would have become the anti-vax hero in the first place. The takeaway here, guys, is this is a cautionary tale. We're not dancing on his grave. The cautionary tale is no matter how brazen your rhetoric is, no matter how alpha you believe yourself or others believe you to be because of your job or because of your physical appearance or whatever, COVID might kill you. And so we have one tool that really reduces the odds of that, and it's the vaccine. This guy chose to forego it. It was because of his prayer to God, not because of any valid medical reason or anything else. He has now died of COVID. Celebrity anti-vax cop who told Jay Inslee to kiss his ass is dead, and he will not be working any of those other jobs. We'll take a quick break and be right back. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com and use the coupon code BETTER21 for a huge discount. Joinpakman.com. The David Pakman Show is primarily funded by viewers and listeners like you who sign up on our website, joinpakman.com. We do an extra show every day for our members, and I would love for you to sign up. You can use the coupon code WOW22 to get a sizable discount, and you'll become a member instantly. You can once again do that at joinpakman.com. Over the weekend, Donald Trump held his second 2022 rally. These rallies now are very clearly 2022 focused, other than still being focused on the 2020 election, which Donald Trump continues to claim falsely that he won. But the rallies are getting far more dangerous, far more insidious and corrosive. They're now actually starting to sort of tease the idea of more riots in the future if Trump doesn't get what he wants. Trump also dangling pardons for the January 6, 2021 rioters at this rally. And the dangerous part is, I don't want to say it's not. The dangerous part is partially that the rally exists and the things that Donald Trump says. But it's hugely that there's a crowd of people who go there, thousands of people who want to hear this stuff. Now, we had two people on the ground at the rally. They filmed some very disturbing interviews, including one individual who admitted that he was in the Capitol on January 6th. And we, of course, will be turning that over to law enforcement. We'll have those videos for you tomorrow. We had Luke Beasley and Josh Pitt on the ground. For today, we're going to look at what the rally actually consisted of. Now, of course, the framing of the rally is always a lie. In this case, it was that there were 85,000 people at the rally. There were not 85,000 people there. There were thousands, though. And that already should concern all of us. And in particular, some of the claims Donald Trump made are particularly authoritarian and fascistic. You know, a principle of authoritarians is they don't respect the law. They use the law as a tool when they can use it for their personal gain. But when the law is an obstacle to their personal gain, they say they will go around the law. And that's exactly what Donald Trump did. Now, before we even get to that, Trump really struggling through this one, the teleprompter reading, losing his place, getting confused, just a couple examples to set the stage for, you know, again, in this case, Trump's right eye swollen, almost completely shut. And he looked confused by what was on the prompter. Here's just one example.
They censor, cancel, and persecute ordinary citizens for speaking the truth while they drown your endless torment of, what they do. They have an endless list of propaganda and propaganda methods.
So a lot of that during the entire rally. Here's Trump referring to the country of Mexico.
The biggest beneficiaries. It's such a good deal that Mexico and Canada, you saw that Mexico and Canada want to get out of it.
And then lastly, Donald Trump also looking extremely confused, talking about the sinister faces of corruption, lawless.
This is incredible. But they're sinister faces of corruption, lawless.
Yeah. Just losing his place frequently, but let's get to the substance. Maybe the craziest part of this is that Donald Trump says if he is reelected, he may pardon people, and he is threatening unrest. Let's start there. Trump actually threatening more riots.
If these radical, vicious, racist prosecutors do anything wrong or illegal, I hope we are going to have in this country the biggest protest we have ever had in Washington, D.C., in New York, in Atlanta, and elsewhere, because our country and our elections are corrupt.
So he's saying there, if the prosecution of the Trump rioters continues in a way I will say is unfair, which he's already doing, then we need to do more of these so-called biggest protests. And at this point, everybody knows what that means. Everybody understands that he's not talking about peaceful protests. He's talking about more riots. And maybe even more perniciously, Trump says if he's reelected, he's going to look at pardons for the people who did the rioting.
So many people have been asking me about it. If I run and if I win, we will treat those people from January 6th fairly. We will treat them fairly. And if it requires pardons, we will give them pardons because they are being treated so unfairly.
Now, that is not due process and the rule of law. That is, politically, these people are on my side, so we're going to come in and give them pardons, even though I don't really know anything about their individual cases. And the important thing here is, consider how jarring this is in comparison to the original story, that it wasn't even really Trumpists that were there. It was Antifa and Black Lives Matter. The first story was, it wasn't Trumpists. It was Antifa dressed as Trumpists. It was Black Lives Matter dressed as Trumpists. There were some peaceful Trump supporters, maybe, but they certainly didn't do anything wrong. Then they shifted into, it was a false flag done by the FBI. Ray Epps, and it was Tucker pushed this story. Then for a little while, it was, I guess, the FBI and Antifa. Now it was Trumpists all of a sudden, I guess, but Trump will pardon them because they're not getting a fair shake. They're not being treated fairly. So I guess it wasn't Antifa, or more realistically, it no longer matters to the story because now the new one is elect me and I will pardon these people. Now, many of you probably would think if I told you Trump bragged about his dementia test again, you'd say, but David, it's almost February of 2022. Didn't he take that test like in the middle of 2020? He's not, you would be right. He's still bragging about the dementia test. Take a look at this.
You know, they were getting a little nasty. They didn't like that we were doing so well. So they said, maybe this guy's not with it. And I said, Ronnie, can I take some kind of a test? Is there something like, you can, sir, but it's very hard.
Now, the number of times Trump says sir during a story is directly proportional to, it's inversely proportional to the truth of the story. So the more he says sir, the more untrue the story is. We figured that out. And there's a lot of sirs here.
I said, what's hard? Well, the first questions are easy, but then it gets harder and harder. When you get to question number 30, it's pretty hard, sir. I said, well, would anyone know if I did badly, right? He said, well, you know, it is Walter Reed. A lot of people see what's happening. I better do well.
Even that's interesting because basically what Trump's saying is, why don't I take it? And if I don't do well, we just don't release it.
He said, what do you think? I said, I don't know. I did pretty well in my life. Let's take it. And I took this cognitive test.
Now, it's really, again, it's important. Trump says, I did well in my life, so let's do a cognitive test. The test, it's the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. It's just meant to screen for serious dementia. Whether you did well in school or not doesn't actually have a bearing on whether you are now suffering from a medical condition. He still doesn't get it.
And as Ronnie said, I got every single question right. He said I aced it. And you know, from that point on, they didn't talk. They found other things. Then they said, he wants to be a dictator. He wants to be. They went on to other things. But I think Biden should do the same thing, Ronnie. Would you administer the test, please? It would solve so many problems. I have a feeling he won't be doing it anytime soon. Do you agree? But seriously, Ronnie Jackson.
So it's still a topic. A former president bragging about how he passed a dementia test. Then Donald Trump complained that prosecutors are out there to get Trump unfairly. This causes the crowd to chant, "Lock her up," about Hillary. But how jarring is it that Trump's saying there's prosecutorial misconduct against me, and meanwhile the crowd is chanting to lock up Hillary, who hasn't even been charged with a crime? I thought he was about due process. I guess not.
Local prosecutors in New York and other locations who horribly campaigned for office on, "We're going to get Trump." This is how they campaign. "We're going to get Trump. They know nothing about me. We're going to get him." Then got elected and are working overtime to fulfill their campaign promises. They've subpoenaed more than...
It's really something. I mean, he says these prosecutors aren't behaving correctly. Everything needs to be done the right way. Yet lock up Hillary, who's not even been accused, never mind charged, of any crime. Trump doing his supply chain stuff, of course.
Can you believe what's happening? You can't get anything. The shelves are empty. I did a book. They can't publish it anymore. They can't get the paper, the glue, the ink. Go out and buy it. You'll like it.
Every opportunity to promote his book is an opportunity Trump takes. And then lastly, maybe the one bit of truth from the rally, Trump says when Republicans retake Congress, they will investigate the Biden family. That he's probably telling the truth about. I do believe they will do that.
And Biden has the real scandals, and rest assured, when Republicans retake Congress, the Biden corruption will be investigated and exposed by Congress. But we no longer have a free and fair press. If we did, all of this would end. It would.
Yeah. I think that's the one piece I think he's telling the truth about. As I've said before, I believe if Republicans win in November, they will investigate Biden. They will investigate Biden's family. They may even impeach Joe Biden. Won't convict in the Senate, but they may even impeach Joe Biden. So an extraordinarily corrosive rally, and these are going to continue. He is going to play a role in 2022. Later in the show, I'll tell you about, or tomorrow rather, new polling is not so good for Trump among the Republican Party, but it's certainly not stopping the rallies. So the first part of the problem we're now experiencing in the country is we still have Trump running around saying corrosive and damaging things about our democracy, and it's a real problem. The reason we worry about it is because thousands of people still go to the rallies and the guy still has millions of followers. And I'm going to play some clips for you of interviews done with Trump rallygoers on Saturday in Conroe, Texas. And this is really about a lot of things. What I'm going to play for you is very disturbing. If there's kids in the room, you may not want them to see this stuff. But this is about education. This is about untreated mental illness in some cases. You'll see that. It's about the weaponizing of vulnerable people by politicians. It's about a lot of different things. But at the very top of the list, it's about this kind of coalescing of people with the absolute worst instincts to allow authoritarian strongmen wannabes like Trump to put in place any vision of the country, even one where there is no due process, there is no freedom of the press. We lack all of those things under this grand vision of people like Trump. And the people, either because they don't understand or they're distracted with other things or because they're mentally ill, they allow it to go on. Because if Trump wants it, it must be okay. Let's just start with this first clip. I won't even introduce it.
Do your research on this right here. The World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab. This is bigger than Trump. This is bigger than any of us. This is bigger than any politician. This is a global plan to enslave you and your family and pretty much make you poor and dependent upon a global government.
Something I like to call evil. So it's even bigger than that. It's spiritual warfare right now.
I think it's written about in this book. It's a really popular book. A lot of people read it. I think the Bible, right?
Bible.
Revelation, right? You can't buy or sell without the mark.
So is this a religious delusion? Is this mental illness? If you're watching, you'll notice a guy with a sign behind these folks that says mass formation psychosis, which is sort of the new meme for them. It can become very difficult to discern what is merely a psychotic break and delusional beliefs and paranoid schizophrenia, and what is a religious nut, and what is someone who's just been brainwashed. I mean, I'm not joking about these things. It's very tough. Here's another one of these.
Everybody's happy, and everybody's got one goal, and that's for everybody to love everybody and save our country.
Live their best life.
I got one.
Live their best life.
Unpopular opinion, I'm a flat earther, so I just been talking to some people today telling them why I believe what I believe. It's like I try to find common ground on, because most people would agree that we don't come from monkeys and that we didn't Big Bang, right? So
I can tell you guys, this guy definitely didn't Big Bang. I would concede that. But this is what do we make of that? Is this a sick person, or what is it?
if you can find common ground with people, then you can start building a foundation of like what truth is, you know? So.
And let's go, Brandon.
Right. So sort of quite a contrast, right? We didn't come from monkeys. We didn't Big Bang. Let's find truth and let's go, Brandon. Here's another woman asked about, who knows, something. She's holding a huge Trump head. It's like 4 feet tall, size of Trump's, that's the size of this Trump head that she's holding.
So that's what all this is.
Love it. Is this your first Trump rally?
No, sir. I went to Tulsa, Oklahoma in April.
Tulsa.
And it was Freedom Fest and Clay Clark's Reawaken America tour. And it was about educating people that some of the ideas that we're going through need to be researched a little deeper. There's way too much false information.
That's true. The problem is she's coming up on the wrong end of it.
And you need to educate yourself on health, educate yourself on your water, educate yourself on what you put in your body. And that's a personal choice that they should not have the right to take that away from us.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, keep using your voice. Keep speaking.
Whenever I want to know the truth, when I want to educate myself, when I want to dig deeper, I go to someone who's holding a 4 foot tall cardboard Trump head. I mean, it's just perfectly natural, guys. Then he goes up to some kid, and you can tell this guy's been read the Riot Act on fake news. Listen to this.
What do you think about the way the media just goes for broke on their lies?
I think that people should stop listening to the media and watch y'all's stuff because y'all don't lie about anything.
Right.
And watch Republican news. I mean, there's some news networks that are just Democrat and they're brainwashing the people. Right.
Just watch Republican news and right side broadcasting, and then you'll know the truth. You'll know everything. Lastly, or no, not lastly, I got a couple more for you. Here's a woman in a box. She wore a box. And she really misses Trump's tweets. Her entire life used to be wrapped up in Trump's tweets.
He was kicked off Twitter. I mean, I miss those tweets. What do you do?
Every single day of my life, that's what I spent doing for 5 years.
What a sad life, huh?
Literally. I mean, it's everything I did. And I miss them terribly. And the people miss them terribly. That's the sad thing.
Hear me out. Again, another business idea.
Everybody misses Trump's tweets. Her entire life for 5 years went around Trump's tweets. All right. Now, I don't know if it goes from funny to scary. Maybe it wasn't even funny to begin with. Here's a woman who thinks that Joe Biden was actually killed 2 years ago at Guantanamo Bay and that there is now a fake Joe Biden.
Why are you here supporting Trump? What's your motivation?
He's our real president. Thank you very much.
And what are you basing that on?
The fact that the election was stolen and he's our real president. So Biden is fake and the real Biden was assassinated in 2019, March of 2019.
So tell me this.
So listen to the number of lies. Trump's the real president. Trump actually won. The real Biden was assassinated, or as she says, assassinated 2 years ago.
I agree with you with the part that there's no way those Dominion machines, they've already been proven all over the world was crooked, the Dominion machines. But Trump's having 40, 50, 60,000 people at his rallies before presidency or for the election. And Biden has 50 people, and that includes the people there for security and the media all together. And he supposedly got more votes than Obama.
Correct.
So how do you explain that?
Because the American people know who our really president is.
Right.
We're fighting for America, and we are going to save this country and the world. And people know that Biden is a pedophile, and they don't want to go see him because they know he's a pedophile.
You talking about Creepy Joe?
Creepy Joe's a pedophile. Did you know that he had an island? His family has an island near Epstein, like 8 miles away.
I didn't know
His
that.
family, it's called Water Island. Yeah,
Wow.
his whole family are pedophiles.
So he has like a kind of like a little Neverland, kind of like Michael Jackson had.
No, Michael Jackson was saving the children. They destroyed his.
Even that, the guy tries to agree. The guy goes, yeah, Biden's got a pedophile island, kind of like Michael Jackson's Neverland. And she goes, no. Michael Jackson was not doing anything wrong. He was saving the kids.
Right. Michael Jackson, I thought for years he was on the bad side. He's not. He was saving the children. And when he plays at the inauguration, when Michael Jackson comes and plays for us, people are going to realize that it's all.
So she thinks Michael Jackson's alive.
Complete sham.
You think so?
He had a big queue, Neverland. He had that big queue, saving the children. Trump helped him escape.
That was part
He
of.
helped John F. Kennedy Jr. escape. He helped Princess Diana escape.
So John F. Kennedy Jr. and Princess Diana are also alive. How is this even, we're up against a political movement that's filled with people with no connection to reality, undiagnosed and certainly untreated mental illness, at least in some cases. Here's the last one about a satanic system that we're in.
That is pure evil.
It's good versus evil. It's not left, right. It's not Democrat, Republican.
And I believe that too right now. You know what I'm saying? I think this system that we got going on right now is a satanic system. Yeah. And let me tell you something. I believe Satan is on his job, man. He is on his job. Oof. And we need to be getting on with our job. We got to take this country back for God, man. Yeah. Huh? We got to take this country back for Jesus Christ, man.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
Darkness can.
So always, it's really a unique mix that is not common in other countries of lack of education, religiously based delusions, conspiracism, and in some loose sense, mental illness that can include paranoid schizophrenia and other things. I'm not diagnosing any particular individual. We're saying the movement has all of those things within it. How do you even run against such a movement? That's a really difficult question to answer. We'll have some of these clips on our Instagram, which you can find at David Pakman Show. If you value what we do at the David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind the scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show, as well as special discounts on merch, including hats, hoodies, mugs, and t-shirts. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. In a new interview, the former Donald Trump National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn, says that COVID was intentionally released by people like George Soros, Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, and others in order to further their goal of ruling the world and controlling humanity. And defeating Donald Trump, of course. We're going to look at a little bit of this. This is from InfoWars. And here's what I really want you to think about as you watch this and listen to this. This man was the National Security Advisor of the United States at one point. And that one point was not that long ago. It was just a few years ago. And this is what he is now saying. Now, I also want you to think about, is he out of his mind? Or is he grifting and doesn't believe this stuff? I actually have an opinion, but I'm going to tell you after we look at the clip. Is this for real or is he grifting? That's the question.
The World Health Organization, which has come into the news quite a bit because of all this COVID stuff and the responses. But all of these global organizations, the United Nations is another one. All these global organizations, they see themselves, and those that are sort of even above them, they see themselves as, this is how we can rule the world. This is how we can control societies. This is how we can control humanity. So let's introduce something called COVID.
Introduce.
And they did it, and they did it for a couple of reasons. One of the big reasons was to steal an election. I mean, if the Democrats, worked as hard on foreign policy as they worked on stealing the elections, maybe we would be better off. But
now, the counter to that, of course, is if Donald Trump had just dealt with COVID well, he would have sailed to re-election like so many other world leaders did. So COVID hurt Trump because he failed, but many world leaders succeeded and sailed to easy re-elections.
So there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of things here going on. But yes, these are globalist organizations. These are world organizations. And when you start to look at, who is directing them and who is leading them, there are real people behind that. And Schwab is one. You got George Soros. You have the Arabella Group. I mean, these are real things. These are led by real people who have placed themselves. Gates is another one, who have placed themselves above some of these world institutions, and they drive them. They really do drive them. So
this is just about the craziest, most unhinged hypothesis anyone could come up with about COVID and Soros and Gates and Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum. Now, again, without a doubt, the mental illness explanation would surface here, right? Any more or less normal person who watches this would consider, is this a propaganda spreader or is this a psychotic break? And when you see weaponized Trumpism, it can be genuinely difficult to discern conspiracism from someone experiencing a psychotic break. That's a reality. It's quite a reality. And we saw that in the clips of the people being interviewed at the Trump rally in the last segment. But I think that Flynn is grifting. I think Flynn is definitely grifting here. That's my instinct. I believe that Michael Flynn is doing this to drum up. I mean, listen, where is he going to get support? He is obviously not going to get it from the sane left. You might find some wacky people on the left, supposedly on the left, like, I'm not even going to name people, but some of the usual suspects that have sort of gone off the deep end on the left, maybe they would see someone like Flynn and be like, this guy's willing to tell the truth. But basically, the left is not going to support him. The establishment right is not going to support him because even though he was pardoned, this guy was convicted. He did absolutely horrible things. So much of the right's not going to support him either. So the potential constituency for someone like Michael Flynn to make money from and to get speaking gigs is going to be the QAnon type conspiracy theorist. So my instinct is that he's wacky, but that he doesn't believe this stuff and that this is a grift. The crazy part, though, is that there are many people who will watch this and hear him talk about it, and they'll go, yeah. George Soros is responsible for COVID. That makes a lot of sense to me. They'll nod along to it, and that's an extraordinarily disturbing thing. Regardless of whether you believe vaccines work, which they do, or whether COVID is likely to be serious in any particular population about which we have different data, like regardless of all of those disagreements that some people have not using fact to come to conclusions, most everybody would agree if you have COVID, you should stay home, right? Like even people who don't want to get vaccinated mostly believe COVID exists, it's contagious, and you should stay home when you have COVID. Former Republican Congresswoman Michele Bachmann is now praising Sarah Palin for going out to restaurants when she was contagious and infected with COVID last week. So we're going to look at that. Just as a reminder, Sarah Palin was seen dining at a Manhattan restaurant, Elio's Italian restaurant in the Upper East Side. She had COVID at the time. You may remember that the timeline was, and now I want to make sure I have the timeline right. She tested positive for COVID. I believe it was January 23rd, Sunday the 23rd. She had been out to eat in New York on Saturday the 22nd. And then she was seen within the 5-day period during which you're not supposed to be out. She was seen in the middle of last week on Wednesday out dining at restaurants. We actually had that clip for you last week. We're just going to take a look at a little bit of it here with no audio. I'll describe what we're seeing. You see Sarah Palin sitting at a restaurant, one of these like indoor, indoor type scenarios. This also raised the question, this technically is outside, but a few days earlier, she had reportedly been indoors at this restaurant, and New York does require proof of vaccination to dine indoors. The question is she actually vaccinated, but she's been lying that she's not? Or did the restaurant just not check for the vaccination? Okay, whatever the case may be. So Michele Bachmann is interviewed on Fox News, and she says we should be commending Sarah Palin for being out with COVID. That's what she said. Take a look.
Has different reactions to it. But I think, honestly, Sarah Palin is to be commended because she's trying to act like a normal human being in the greatest city in America, New York City. She's going out to eat at a wonderful little boutique Italian restaurant. It has different reactions.
So that's the view. She should be commended for it. Now, I wonder, like prior to COVID, right, during flu season, if Michele Bachmann found out that a Republican was out with the flu eating at restaurants, would they say that's a great heroic thing to do? Wow, we should really commend her for being out with the flu. That's a really great thing. This is getting more and more stupid every day, and I don't think it's going to turn around soon. Some people said, well, this is Darwinism at its finest. It's really not, because Darwinism would be that this behavior kills off Palin before she's able to reproduce. She's got kids already. So unfortunately, it's not Darwinism. It might just spread the virus to other people at the restaurant who did nothing wrong. But now, I mean, it's gotten so backwards that they are now cheering people who go out with a highly contagious virus to restaurants. That's the rock bottom that we have now hit. Follow us on social media, interact with the David Pakman Show community, see exclusive content, see when we're taking calls live, and stay up to date on other big show announcements. We post daily. Find us on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and TikTok. So we have an opportunity here to do a little bit of learning, of education about how our electoral system works and some of the nuances and particulars that some of us may not be familiar with. The story about Mike Pence's possible role in the 2020 election is again just front and center as Donald Trump's new spokeswoman, Liz Harrington, posted to Twitter a statement from Trump going after Mike Pence, saying Pence could have turned over the election if he wanted and essentially given it to Trump. The statement put out yesterday from Trump reads, if the vice president Mike Pence had, quote, absolutely no right to change the presidential election results in the Senate, despite fraud and many other irregularities, how come the Democrats and rhino Republicans like wacky Susan Collins are desperately trying to pass legislation that will not allow the vice president to change the results of the election? Actually, what they are saying is that Mike Pence did have the right to change the outcome, and they now want to take that right away. Unfortunately, he didn't exercise that power. He could have overturned the election. Now, it's not true that the laws that are being proposed about the vice president's role are because the vice president could overturn the election. It's almost like there's so many ignorant people that falsely think the vice president can just decide who wins, that they're looking at putting something more basic in writing to that end. But we actually have an infrastructure of law already that makes it very clear that the vice president's role with the Electoral College is just opening the envelopes, literally and figuratively, and we're going to get to that. But think about what they're saying. I mean, if what Trump is saying is correct, it means Kamala Harris could choose the winner of the 2024 election. If she doesn't like the person that supposedly won, Kamala could say, nope, somebody else won. And of course, that's not the case. The truth is that the vice president does not have the power to do any of the things that Donald Trump has hoped that Pence would have done, including, seating an alternate slate of electors from certain states or any such thing. The 12th Amendment governs this really, really clearly. And you can just Google 12th Amendment and read the entire thing. It's not very long, but the important relevant points here are that the 12th Amendment says the electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president. They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president. Okay, fair. The president of the Senate, meaning the vice president, remember, the VP of the U.S. is the president of the Senate. The president of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House, meaning a joint session, open all the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. That says nothing about evaluate whether this is the correct slate of electors. It's the VP shall open the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. Doesn't even say the vice president will be doing the counting. The votes shall be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be the president. That's it. You then have, in addition to the 12th Amendment, the Electoral Count Act of 1887. Now, why in 1887? Well, in 1876, there was a disputed election. And in the roughly 9, 10, 11 years that followed, the Electoral Count Act of 1887 was put together. It also is very clear. It, number one, puts the onus of resolving disputes to the states. If there are disputes, the state resolves the disputes, not the federal government or the Congress. So, for example, if a governor from Arizona certified 2 different slates of electors, right? They sign off on some Democratic electors and then a slate of Republican electors. That would be a real problem. If a state just doesn't certify any electors, that would be a problem that would come to Congress. But 90% of that is states handle these issues. Now, if you have one of these extenuating circumstances where the federal government gets involved, there's a few things Congress can do. If there's a ministerial error, if there's an elector sent who's not eligible to be an elector for some reason, if there's a candidate certified who isn't eligible to be president, those would be reasons why Congress can get involved. It's very clearly very limited. And to deviate from that requires powers that the vice president doesn't have. It depends on the House and Senate. And that's where all of this stuff comes from. A member of the House would stand and object, and then they need a member of the Senate to stand and object with them, et cetera. So the story that they're telling is it's not only a dangerous story, it's also an untrue story. And what we're up against is that in March, Trump and Pence are both speaking back-to-back nights at a Republican committee event in New Orleans, Louisiana. And it'll be very interesting to see if there Trump also slams Pence, and what the crowd reaction would be is something I would want to see as well. Okay, this is, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. This relates to the bridge collapse in Pittsburgh. Now, at the top of the show, we already talked about the hundreds of bridges just in New Jersey that have the same poor rating as did the bridge in Pittsburgh that collapsed. But I want to show you just like the bottom of the barrel right-wing opportunism on this. In a segment on Fox News about the bridge collapse, Fox host or anchor or whatever, Julie Banderas, said, this is what happens when Joe Biden talks and talks about an infrastructure bill and doesn't get anything done. Now, of course, Joe Biden passed the infrastructure bill, but Julie Banderas apparently didn't know that. Notice also that everybody on screen is just kind of nodding along. You've got Kayleigh McEnany, you've got Arbiter of Ideas, Dave Rubin, and others. Take a look at this.
Fairy tales. I love fairy tales. I mean, but normally I only enjoy them when it's during a bedtime story in the evening, not on a daily basis for the past year since the White House has been overrun by Democrats. But President Biden has been making promises over promises over promises. And as you've noticed, none of them have come true. And when a president makes promises and then doesn't deliver, and then something like this where a bus, I mean, there could have been multiple casualties. So thank God nobody was killed.
True.
But honestly, a bridge collapsing right before back in June of 2021, he's started talking about his bipartisan infrastructure deal.
Right.
There's nothing bipartisan about it. If it was bipartisan, it would have been passed by now. So clearly he's not getting the message across to the other side of the aisle, which, by the way, if you remember, during his campaign, he said that he was going to be the president that was going to reach across the aisle, that he was actually going to make policy.
And you see Kayleigh McEnany there nodding along. Now, that infrastructure bill did pass. The bill passed months ago. It passed in November. And it was bipartisan in that 19 Republican senators and 13 Republican representatives voted for the bill. Later, Julie Banderas tweeted that she misspoke. Now, she's since deleted the tweet because the tweet is so stupid. But her explanation was, quote, "I misspoke. I was referring to the president touting the bipartisan bill back in June, and here we are today, and nothing has improved, hence the bridge collapsed." Now, it was so stupid because it takes a while to actually get that money and get contracts and distribute it. Her criticism was about Joe Biden and the passage of the bill. Now she's saying the criticism is actually that that bridge wasn't yet fixed. But Biden obviously is no more to blame for that than the fact that Trump had 4 years to do infrastructure and didn't. The bridge problems are major problems. The infrastructure problems are a disaster. I've been talking about it on the show for a decade. There's no question about that. But the initial claim and the criticism and then the explanation, it's all completely bogus. Like this is really the worst of trash politics. She makes a statement based on completely, they're not wrong facts. It's based on lies. She takes the statement back, but says, my general analysis was still good and it's considered a correction, but it's so stupid that then she deletes it. Like this is really the worst of the worst of the worst. And unfortunately, you've got these bobbleheads on Fox News, their heads on a swivel, nodding along. Even Kayleigh McEnany, who has to know that the bill had already passed, and it passed months ago, and it passed with Republican support as well. This is another one of those examples where you quite literally will have brain rot if you just listen to the analysis they put out and you believe it. Yeah, Joe Biden's to blame because he never passed that bill. Well, actually, he did pass it. And it, takes some time to get things done. But what about the 4 years Trump had during which he said he was going to do infrastructure and he didn't? Well, this is where we end up. We have a voicemail number. That number is 219-2-DAVID-P. This is so funny, guys. You know how I sometimes tell you there's a contingent of the left. I use the term revolutionary leftist or Stalinist, Leninist leftists. Some of you prefer more pejorative terms like tanky. I don't, it's not a term that I use. And I pointed out last week something that to most of you is now uncontroversial. There are leftists who play coy with and defend and sometimes straight up support, in the case of Maduro in Venezuela, these revolutionary authoritarian type figures that claim to be left, but are really failures of leftism. Anyway, a caller really didn't like that. He says it doesn't exist. He's furious with me. Take a listen to this.
Did I just hear you correctly say that some people on the left are in favor of totalitarian regimes? Are you
They won't call them totalitarian regimes, but in the interests of claiming to be for socialism or against American imperialism, they will end up supporting those very things.
For real, David?
Yeah.
No, that's wrong. You're 110% wrong. That makes no sense at all.
What?
Some people on the left, like me, are against fighting with Russia because we don't like our imperialistic attitude.
That's a different issue. And as I've said, I literally addressed this. You can't just say, I'm against American imperialism, so we want to just say whatever Putin is doing is fine. You can condemn something Putin does while saying, I don't want the U.S. involved, for example. You can condemn the insanity of the Chavez-Maduro regimes in Venezuela while saying, I don't want the U.S. picking a leader. I don't want the U.S. pushing regime change. these folks get so triggered by this.
U.S. imperialistic attitude. That part that you said was correct, but not some people on the left are in favor of totalitarian regimes. That makes no sense.
Again, they would deny that they are authoritarian. And by the way, I did. The other thing is I didn't say totalitarian. I said authoritarian. So it's like, this is the perfect example of someone denying reality and misstating my position. But, you know, I'm used to it by now.
They're not leftists if they are. They're people on the right. Only rightists would be in favor of like that.
That's actually a really good point. I believe that a lot of these so-called leftists who say Putin's not bad and Bashar al-Assad's not bad and Maduro's not bad and Castro was fine, and that's my position is they're not really on the left. They insist that they are, but I would actually agree inadvertently with the caller. I don't think those folks are actually leftists. Anyway, that's a perfect example of what I've been telling you guys about. We've got a great bonus show for you today. We will talk about the believed frontrunners for Joe Biden's Supreme Court pick. We're going to talk about the hilarity that has developed with Glenn Youngkin's tip line to snitch on teachers. It's actually hilarious. And we will talk about problems with the child tax credit, in terms of it actually being distributed to people. We're going to talk about confusion around that and much more on today's bonus show. You can sign up at joinpacman.com to get instant access. We will see you then or on tomorrow's show.